Welcome to the Software People Stories. I'm Shiv.
I'm Chitra.
And I'm Gayatri.
We bring you interesting, untold stories of people
Associated with the creation
Or consumption of software-based solutions.
You'll hear stories of what worked,
and sometimes what didn't,
you will also hear very personal experiences.
and insights that would trigger your thoughts
And inspire you to do even greater things.
Every year, the Software People Stories dedicates the month of March to women guests to call out their contributions and highlight some women's perspectives. Today, I'm very happy to introduce our guest, Krishna Kumari, who is also a podcaster hosting the New Indian Woman podcast. In this conversation, Krishna talks about her first association with computers during her engineering student days and her first job, and reflecting on the novelty and curiosity around computers and software that generated an attraction to the sector. How, after joining a large IT organization as a campus hire, she moved across various roles over the next 22 years. And then leaving the software industry and volunteering at various NGOs for about 7 years, and then getting back to the IT industry, handling an applications portfolio at a large universities. She also talks about how our skills in programming languages were associated with an invisible class system among the developers, with developers wanting to work on only specific languages. And getting an opportunity to talk to one of her Uber bosses and complaining about not getting an opportunity to work on the language of her choice and what she heard from him. She also talks about how she kept on learning new technologies as they evolved. And she talks about how important it is to understand the user experience and design for that. Another tip that she has is about seeking inputs from others as feedback so that one gets opportunities to discover one's own strengths and chart out where they can actually contribute. And how it is important to nurture a quality of transparency to gain the trust of a team, and how she discloses her strength areas. Even when she moved to the social sector, she mentions how a mentor was instrumental in guiding her in making that switch by making her think what her contribution to the social sector could be. It's about finding a niche to contribute and how she brought her experience in process management in the corporate sector to the social sector, and how it is very, very important, not only in the social sector, to form genuine relationships with people. She also explains the reason for starting the New Indian Woman podcast, primarily to share actionable strategies that anyone can pick up. And finally, we do talk a bit about career tips and the importance of the qualities that a person brings to the table. Listen on. Hi, Krishna. Welcome to the Software People Stories.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So I think from the time we first met, I think that was when both of us kind of started our podcasting journeys. I said, yeah, I have to get your story, but it has taken so long. We'll start with your origin story, since it's about software people. What was your association with software? How did it come about? And then maybe a little bit on your career trajectory. And then we will take it from there.
Yeah. So I come from a small town called Alapi. It is famous for its backwaters. Studied there, did computer science engineering in Kerala. So that was my first brush with software. And that was the first time during engineering is when I saw a computer for the first time.
Okay.
Right? Quite a long while ago. And I finished my engineering and joined IT after campus hire in the year 92. So now it is 30 years plus. So people don't have to do the math. while you're listening to the podcast. I'm 52. So that was my first brush with software. And I worked in the same organization for 22 years,
Hmm.
doing various roles. Within the organization, I moved. So I got to work in multiple domains, etc. Started as a developer. Then there were opportunities of continuing in the technical or managerial stream, as they call it. So I moved in the managerial kind of a stream, but still definitely in terms of applications. So for people who are not so familiar with software, this what I'm referring to as applications is maybe ticketing, railway ticket booking kind of applications, or whatever our grocery ordering online. So
Hmm.
all of those kind of applications is what my area was. So whether it was banking, it was telecom billing, etc., etc. And after around 22 years of working, I decided to leave software. Then around approximately 5 to 7 years, I volunteered for several NGOs, and I wasn't sure how my software experience would be relevant. So that's another story. But still, I tried out multiple things during that approximately 7 years kind of a break from software, and then resumed my career in software.
Hmm.
And currently, I handle the IT applications portfolio for a large university.
Wonderful. I think this immediately there are probably about a dozen questions that spring up.
Sure.
So when you said that the first exposure that you got was during your engineering, there is this difference. Or when you say engineering, normally it is all about building things, about things that are physical, etc. And software is all touchy-feely and then abstract. Was there something that you found attracting or making you move towards software, or were you able to handle both equally?
No, actually, now when I connect the dots back,
Mhm.
it's not because I had any idea of what software was.
Hmm.
Because when you maybe at that time, and we have to remember when we are talking about that time is without internet time,
Hmm.
right? So you just hear the words computers, and there
Mhm.
is something magical about these words computer, electronics, etc. You have no idea how these are related.
Hmm.
You have no idea at the end of your plus two what a hardware is, software is, which sounds very strange. It sounds very prehistoric, right? Nowadays, a 5-year-old would be able to tell that what software is in terms of at least an app on a phone, but we had no idea. So there was some excitement about these new words, computer and electronics, which is going to kind of make a big difference in the world. So people around us, especially the elders, parents, everybody who many people had a say in terms of what career you choose, right? Apart from us, we were completely ignorant. So everyone said, hey, civil engineering we know, mechanical we know, electrical we know.
Hmm.
So, but there is something exciting about electronics and computer. Maybe they meant they don't know. Okay. Maybe there was a lot of anticipation
Mhm.
around that this is something that is going to not maybe change the world, but at
Mhm.
least it's some new big thing on the horizon kind of a thing. So that was
Mhm.
the excitement.
Hmm.
There was no idea about this abstractness, nothing, frankly.
Then you also mentioned that you were working more on the application side, and you moved across domains. How was that experience? How were you able to pick up the domain part? Because for applications, that is probably more
Yeah.
important than the technical part, which you can figure out.
Let me share a couple of anecdotes, which,
Sure.
yeah. So when I got this campus offer, in my college, it was a big celebration, okay?
Hmm.
And as a girl getting campus, and there were very few engineering colleges then. Campus placements was a new concept then. So
Hmm.
there was excitement around many of these things.
Mhm.
So I have no idea what I'm going to do.
Hmm.
Mm, and no idea whether it is software, hardware, whatever, because you know in theory you have written exams and cleared. But frankly, what are the differences? In what kind of work you will do on a day-to-day basis? You know you will be programming. Beyond that, we knew nothing. So at that time, C was the in thing. So you are the most cool software developer if you are coding in C. Anything else is not C. That's all. There were, you know, if I gave a very bad example, it was like a caste system. Either you are C or you are an upper caste kind of a. It was like that. There was so much of bias. And without knowing anything, I thought, okay, I've been selected. Now I'm going to work in C. So when I came and joined, I was put in a banking project where it was COBOL.
Okay.
Okay, it was called MF COBOL. I felt completely offended. So the day I'm joining, I don't even know. So I have this idea that I'm going to do research. I will be in the R&D team because this department was tagged under R&D. So I'm thinking about like I'm here, I'm going to code and I'm going to do exciting stuff. So I was completely let down when I was told that COBOL of all things like that. So I felt very upset. I remember even crying and calling up my parents and informing about this. And they said, "What is the problem?" They were not able to understand all such things. And I remember within a few months of being in that project, there was a very senior person in our organization, though very large. We had accessibility to very senior folks at that time, GM and above, who were sitting in the next bay. We could walk up to them and speak to them. So I went to this person whom I figured out was my boss's, whatever. Because you do not see, you can't, it is not published anywhere, right? There's no internet again. You don't have an intranet. So you figure out that, oh, this guy is the super boss. Okay, I just walked up to him and said, "Sir, this is, I am not interested in this MF COBOL and all those things. Banking may be a nice thing, but I want to do C." And what he said then, it comes to me again and again, many a times in different contexts. He said, I can relate to you, but it doesn't matter. The C will change, something else will come. It is not about which code or which language you code in, etc. It is about how you can make a difference. I did appreciate it then, really. And then he said one word. I said, "Thank you." And I felt, okay, this guy is not allowing me to get transferred from this project to another project. He's putting some nice words. When I was about to leave, he said one thing. He said, "I can relate to when I joined. And when I thought I'll be working in some department, I was put somewhere else. But believe me, you are going to be here where I am now. And it wouldn't matter to you whether you coded in C or anything else." So whatever he said, some 20 minutes of bhashan he gave, I don't know whether that entered my head or not. This last lines has stayed with me. I really wanted to believe him, and I could not imagine me in that position. Because life was all about coding in C and look cool amongst friends. But then I started a teeny weeny bit, of looking at it differently. And banking was something I did not know. So it was very difficult, especially in those days. You do not have a separate business analyst. You do not have a separate consultant coming. You don't have a developer. You don't have somebody else telling you what to code. Your role is not limited to code. And the most beautiful thing was we had to face the customer. We go speak to them. We were implementing something in State Bank of India. You go there as youngsters, fresh from college. So we are speaking to people who are as old as our dad. And half the things those people tell, we are not able to understand. We write it down. Then we come back. Then we discuss a few of us, and then we code. And then you take it back to them. And that happiness and excitement of seeing your software coming up in the cashier screen, the kick you get out of it, that is when you really understand, oh, this is software, and that excitement of making it happen. So it's not as if because there's a domain experience, I went there or anything of that sort, because at that time nobody had. People who knew banking did not know software. People who knew software did not know the domain. So
Yeah.
you learn, you start somewhere and learn the other and proceed. It went on. So I have spent in each domain at least 6 to 7 years.
Yeah.
It was nice. You learn somewhere, you reach somewhere, then you feel scared about moving from one domain to another. But mind you, at the same time, the technology was also changing. So by the time you think that you know COBOL and you have tried to do some coding for banking and all, COBOL no longer exists or no longer exists. It's no longer popular. Then you have to move to Java. So how does it matter? You're moving from COBOL to Java. You might as well move from banking to something else. So the journey has been in that manner. And in the organization, I could move from each of these domains. And always, because I was new either to the technology or to the domain or both, it was interesting. So for somebody looking from outside, 22 years in the same organization, so they imagine it as, you are in one desk, you're doing the same job. But it's not. There was so much of learning on both the domain side and the technology side that kept me excited about it. Long answer to your question.
Yeah. No, very interesting. But this is one question that sometimes the listeners ask about this thing of what may otherwise be called as a transferable skill. Saying that when I change, whether it is the domain or the role, should I start from the bottom or would I be pushed to the bottom because I'm new to the domain or new to the technology and so on?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question because I believe what you gain in experience, you do gain in experience. You can apply it differently. So, for example, when in banking, let me say that when I was looking at, or I was initially working as a developer, and I was not able to see from the user experience angle at all. Mind you, at that time there was no UX design person and so on and so forth. You were one and all. So that doesn't mean that you knew everything, but you tried, you struggled, etc. But when you take to the bank and you think that you have done a fantastic piece of code, and the more complex the code is, there is so much more satisfaction, right? And then you take it. And that clerk who is the cashier, he said, I have to do so many, and it was not mouse, tab and keyboard and all those days. This
Yeah,
was not
yeah,
Windows machine. This
yeah,
was Unix terminals. And they would say, why should I do so much? It's easier for me to write on paper, one red color pen and one blue color pen, they will do. You have made it more difficult. It is complex.
yeah,
And then your ego is like, you know you are hit by this because you feel you have taken a fascinating piece of code out there. So what you learn in that process is it doesn't matter how so complex or simple, nobody cares. They care about a working piece of code which they can
yeah,
use very easily. So this is an example of a skill which, if I move to telecom and where I was working on telecom billing, the same thing is applicable there,
yeah,
because at the end of it, can you create a bill which the user can understand? And you can have the most exciting bill calculation logic, but if you're not showing the breakup to the customer,
mm,
that your STD is this much, I'm saying in a phone kind of a context, your landline calls are so much, your STD is so much, and this internet telephony, which was coming up at that time, the breakup, it doesn't matter if you don't show. So this is an example of a skill where you get multiple perspectives, and as you grow, you are able to see a problem.
mhm,
Initially, as a developer, you see it from the technical perspective. Then there are layers and layers of perspectives coming, I feel. And when you are much more senior, you are trying any problem, you are trying to look through these lens of different perspectives. So
mm,
that is a skill that you get, and which is very valuable, I would say.
mhm,
So even now, when I was like 50, when I go back and I started in a university
mm,
where I have no idea. See, university, how the university works. what all goes into a universe, the software applications used in a university, for me, I'm starting from zero.
Mm.
But when somebody is discussing a problem, all your years of experience, whether it is from a usability, whether it is from a design, whether it is from simplicity, all of those come in.
Mhm.
And I feel to that extent, those are transferable skills.
Yeah, very nicely put. So was this again something similar when you said that you chose a managerial track? Was there any dilemma, or were you considering a technical and managerial, and was it difficult
Uh,
to decide?
Uh, it wasn't because if as a developer when I joined in my first year, if somebody had asked me, would you want to be technical managerial, I would have very clearly said technical.
Mhm.
Uh, because now I can understand how ill-informed about my strengths and weaknesses I was. At
Mm.
that time I did not have the clarity.
Okay.
So this decision making is not an overnight decision making. It is a slow progress. You become a developer, then you become a senior developer, then whatever it is, the next module lead, etc., etc. So then I realized that I'm able to uh, enjoy, and my strengths, there are two parts, what you enjoy and how others are perceiving your work. You can feel that you are enjoying this, but if others are perceiving that you are not being valuable in that particular role. So that is when I realized, after maybe around my fifth year of experience approximately, is when I realized that, oh, this seems to be something which is more up my alley, the
Mm.
managerial part.
Mm.
And I was getting the excitement around getting a few of us together,
Mm.
and then what do you say, making a project happen.
Mm.
Initially a small module or small component, etc. And that excitement of not just you doing individually and doing
Mm.
something, but getting a team with you and working as a team, where you lead the team, you are responsible for that particular unit. I found it very exciting.
Mm.
So it was a natural progression into that. And I would also say that my bosses at that time, it was easy to ask them for this feedback as to, this is what I feel that I'm
Mm.
good at this, and maybe this is the stream or this is the direction I should choose, and have an open conversation. And it was very revealing that most of the time they knew my strengths rather than me knowing my strengths,
Mm.
especially in the initial years.
Mm.
So that was a lot of guidance. So when I say these bosses, I'm not talking about my immediate direct boss alone,
Yeah.
their peers, because as a junior person, you're interacting with many people. And what
Mm.
I found always is, when you go and seek inputs about yourself, not necessarily in an appraisal kind of a
Mm.
framework alone, just to say that, can you give me some inputs? This
Mm.
is what I am thinking. You have seen me working at close quarters. What is it that you feel? I am confused about this and that, etc. You see interesting aspects about yourself which you were not aware of.
Mm.
The Johari window kind of a
Yeah.
concept. They show it. And so that helped me in those decisions. It's not as if I just got the clarity and I just went like
Yeah.
that. There were so many people, but I felt it's important to have those people uh, to figure out, that they are approachable, and to go and ask those sometimes very silly and stupid questions to get those insights.
Yeah, interesting. So the converse of this, or the corollary to this question, is sometimes I get questions from at least the first-time managers or leaders,
Hmm.
saying that now I have this role, I think I should be doing this, and I should not be doing some things, but my team expects me to be technically better than them. How do I handle this team? And that's a common question that I get.
Yeah.
So, took on a managerial role, about, just like you mentioned, that you got a lot of feedback and fairly insightful feedback from not only your immediate managers, but the peers and all that. What were some of the techniques that helped you gain the trust of your team and also be more observant or be able to give them the kind of feedback that you receive?
I feel the number one, I wouldn't call it technique, but a quality to nurture is transparency.
Hmm.
Because when I have moved and I have done this movement to multiple domains
Hmm.
and into different technologies, because you can never play the catch up game with technology.
Hmm.
Let us look at it this way. In a typical kind of how the industry is right now, at a junior level you code, okay, and as you gain experience you do less and less of coding, and you are more into design and more into those kind of aspects. But the thing is, if you need to have that level of expertise, you should know how to code for you to help the person who is coding. So there is a dichotomy there, or contradiction which is there inherently. So us attempting that we can guide that particular developer itself is placed incorrectly. So I feel when I say transparency, I feel the fact that they also know, we also know. When I say we as a manager, okay, suppose we are going to a team and we are going to have a team of people reporting to us, they all know, we all know that we cannot be able to, we cannot hope to be able to guide them technically on that particular, what is the best recommended best practice in that technology,
Mhm.
right? But it's best. It is like, the elephant in the room, which will not be spoken about. So
Mm.
I have always felt that whether it is domain or technology, I acknowledge on day one, see, I don't know this.
Mm.
Okay, you don't need to have any big ideas. I am not going to try to learn to be what you are doing. That is not where I am. Together we have to reach somewhere. I can guide you. My experience, some of my experience may be relevant, which is what I'm going to try to help you with. Okay, and I do not know at this point whether I can help you, but
Mm.
all I can say is that there will be best efforts from me, and I hope the best efforts and the sincerity and trust is what I want, so that together we can meet this particular goal. So that has helped. That
Okay.
has helped in them coming and saying, Krishna, we have this problem. We don't know who can help us. So I
Mm.
will say, see, okay, let us look at it. And you need not have the experience in that technology or
Mm.
that particular domain to solve the problem. By looking at it, you may get some ideas, some inputs, because they are inside that problem. They are kind of looking at it from inside a well, and you are seeing from outside. Maybe you are able to shift and make them look at it this way. But you can never attempt to go in and play the game of expertise there,
Mm.
especially if you are from a different domain or technology. But you have to lead.
Yeah. So, how was this when you switched your domain completely to the social sector?
Yeah. So when I switched to my social sector, when I took a break and moved to the social sector, in fact, I, I have been very fortunate to, like I said earlier, to reach up to some people who have worked in some of these areas and go and ask some of these stupid questions. And the luck is in terms of them giving a patient listening ear to my queries and responding to them. So I went to this lady who is considered, what do you say, the mother of the social sector in India, kind of 80 plus. She is, and her name is Valli Srinivasan. She has been the guidance for many NGOs across India. So I went to her, somebody connected me to her, and I said, I would like to do something and I would like to help. She asked me, so she said, what, could you just give me some write up about yourself? And I shared that. And she said, "You have used the word help multiple times. What makes you think you can help?" This was a very, very powerful question for me. It made me think a lot because you feel, you have gained some experience and out there, I'm going to give back to society and all. She put it threadbare in front of me and said, nothing. That you have some skill sets, somebody else may have a better skill set. Can we come together and do something? That's all it is. So, which means again, like going to another domain, etc., I had to go completely to, it was a new domain. Say, just coming again back to the core. I have some skill sets, you have some skill sets. Can we work together and make something different? Can we do something better?
Having jumped in, like you said, you can't go with your earlier baggage. What was it that one gave you the confidence of getting into this completely new thing where a lot of empathy and a passion for creating some impact that you would see in general in the social sector, particularly the smaller NGOs, versus corporate where you're running either weekly
Yeah.
deadlines or quarterly targets and so on?
See, the intention is to do something, but that alone is not enough. Because when you try to do with the smaller NGOs, uh, I was very clear, and this particular conversation with Valli Auntie, as we refer to her, helped me because I said, I don't want to go and teach because I don't know to teach. So many people say that now I'll give back to society, let me go and teach in a nearby school. I don't know if I have the skill to teach. So I said, no, that is not what I want to do. So I am not clear. Basically, I'm not clear what is it that I can do, but I'm ready to do something. So that's when she said, you come from your skill sets. It may be in IT, it may not be relevant to an NGO, but you have to figure out which skill set of yours. So then, when I started interacting with these NGOs, what I realized, the most beautiful part is that there is no process defined at all. So I come from a large software organization where most of the Indian organizations over the past 2.5 decades or so, they've created mammoth set of processes to be followed everywhere. And so there is a framework in which you work, framework in terms of there's a team getting created. This is the project, all of you. So here everything works, I wouldn't call ad hoc, but many people do these multiple things together. So it was like suddenly in a corporate sector, I had a team. People were, roles were very clearly defined. Here, nothing of that sort. A bunch of us, okay, I will also do this, you will also do this. Okay, you don't have the time, then I will create this. So I didn't have that support system, so to speak, in a very defined, formalized manner, which meant you have to figure out your support system. You have to connect through the people. The people relationship part of it has to make up for the absence of processes, the absence of knowledge about IT, the absence of what could be achieved, that lack of clarity. So you have to bridge all of this through forming simple relationships with people, just sitting together on the floor eating with them, just talking in their language, keep aside all the corporate jargon, and things like that. So this was pre-COVID, and if we say that let us get into a call and I'll do a screen share, nobody would understand half the of what I said, right? So you have to be very careful. Can we both connect? And through the computer, I will show something. So they will get very scared that there is this barrier around technology. So we said, no, no, you just have to do. I will take care of everything. I will show you something, and then shall we discuss? So that in our head, in a corporate structure, takes you up some ladder of egos and hierarchy and this and that, and just have to climb down that nicely. You have to reach the floor, okay? And the more you are on the floor and you are ready to sit cross-legged on the floor, the more you are able to bridge the absence of all of these things.
Yeah.
I don't know whether I answered your question.
No, absolutely. Yeah. The connection that you establish with people, because ultimately you're working with people to bring in change.
Right.
Yeah, very nice. So this being part of the series on the March special, and as I mentioned, March we focus on mainly women and women-related topics. I have to ask you about the new Indian woman. What
Okay.
was the trigger? Why did you do this, and what do you hope to do, and what has been your experience?
Yeah. So the New Indian Woman podcast is, it is something I love to talk about. So my podcast also completed 5 years recently, and currently I have taken a short break. So I had been wanting to do something in terms of sharing with more women out there. And the reason being that uh, at least my generation, where while we were growing up, it's not as if there were no women in the workforce, but it was more in banking, teaching, medical fields. There may have been exceptions, but most of the time we heard people only in these. And women in career, what does career even mean? What is the difference between job and a career? Many of these things are new, and most of these things, we realize that all of us are in reinventing, all of us as women, figuring out this so-called balancing of work and this, and the context of the society and the role, the expectations from the woman, and how the corporate expectations are very different. And going through and handling these, because in the corporate, yes, there are times when you know that you are a woman and there is a gender parity issues are there. But what I'm trying to say is, on a day-to-day basis, when you are in a meeting, when you are in discussions, you do not have to be conscious of your gender all the time. There are those, we know there are problems, there are specific scenarios when you know your gender, etc. But most of the time, when you are with your colleagues and discussing problems, solving problems, etc., you don't. The moment you reach home, you are coming back to the Indian patriarchal home setup. So navigating these two, it's not easy. When I say this patriarchal setup, so imagine you come back and you have to handle the homework of the children most of the time, or whatever it may be, depending on the context. The long working hours, the lack of predictability of when the calls will happen, whatever it is. And it meant that balancing involved learning a lot of tips and tricks, and there were not enough opportunities for us or forums for us to sit and talk about it. Share, this is what worked for me. Would you, you may want to consider this. So, first I thought maybe we should start having a forum where we will share, blog about it, etc. It was then I realized there's a contradiction again, because if we start to share like that, who we are talking about very busy women not able to find time, and we are expecting them to find time and read this. So there's a contradiction. That is when I came across this concept of podcast,
Mhm.
and I found it fascinating. Uh, simply because you could be doing something and listening to podcasts.
Mhm.
That hooked me into it, and I realized, oh, maybe I should do something there. This just completed the jigsaw puzzle, where there was that one missing piece. How do we make it reach women who are already busy and they have 15 items, 50 items in their to-do list, where, okay, let me read this article also, should not add to that list. So how can it brilliantly go inside when they can do and enjoy while they are doing other things?
Mhm.
And it was beautiful from that angle.
Yeah.
And the beauty of it is that because it's a podcast, you can meet people. So in the New Indian Movement podcast, I focus on two things, just two things. One is actionable strategies that anybody can pick up. It's up to them whether they want to pick up or not. Okay. So actionable strategies, which either I share, where I collate, I research, etc., or somebody else whom I meet with, they come and they talk about what worked for them. So it's basically actionable strategies. The second is women who inspire. So these are not famous women out there who anybody, some other journalist, somebody will interview.
Mhm.
These are people who mostly nobody knows,
Mm.
who would be okay to, there are inspirational aspects of their life which we can learn from. And we should learn from them definitely, and those stories should not be lost. Their life learning should not be lost. And it is easy for me as a regular person to go and meet with them and get inputs. So the listeners should either get inspired or should get actionable strategies. That's the whole agenda.
Good. Yeah, the whole concept of this new Indian woman I was first exposed to when I was in school. There is a Tamil poet called Bharatiya.
Yeah.
So he has written about what he called as Pudumai Pen.
Hmm.
And of course, that theme runs across in many of his things, which is about the independence and giving the right place, being
Right.
treated
And
as
especially
a
he
person.
wrote in those days,
Yeah, yeah.
right? Yeah.
Uh, so I would normally like to end the conversation with a couple of call it career tips. In this case, I will kind of restrict it. I normally ask for two segments of people. One, those who are entering IT or considering entering IT. And the other is typically those who are going through what may be called as a midlife crisis of either choosing should I be technical, should I be you know, managerial, or with all these new technologies coming in, should I look at some of these new roles, etc. Mm.
I feel for anybody, especially for a newcomer, nowadays, even if when we go to a doctor, we talk about this, right? Nowadays, it's the age of specialists. And we all miss a general physician, a family doctor kind of a thing. So I am saying a specialist is also required, a general physician is also required, right? Why am I telling this in the context of IT is you as an entry level person may get hired into a specific project, into a specific technology, into a specific domain. Or if you are a mid career person, you may already have expertise in some specific area. But actually, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because we are in a fast changing world. So, what is most important are some of the qualities that you bring in. Unless you are aiming to be the, I am going to be the next big expert on AI. Believe me, when you think that already maybe 1 lakh people are ahead of you, and that catch up game can only make you more and more stressed. So, maybe what is the quality? It is important for you to get bigger project, bigger picture of the project, the account, the context of the organization that you're working, and your role.
Mm.
It is important for you to figure out. And here, especially, I feel women do not do this because they are wanting to finish the work and just rush home. So there's networking time which happens, the informal networking and all they lose out on or tend to lose out on. I'm not saying there are exceptions, I understand, but most people, they, especially with younger kids, etc., they are like in a hurry to get back. Let me do what is assigned to me. But it is important to understand whether you do networking or not. You have to understand the overall context of your project, your account. Why is this project important, and why is this role that I am doing important, or is it important? Right? And in these days, you have to be adaptable to move from one area of expertise to move to another area, because if you the era of climbing just one mountain is gone, I feel. You need to reach some base camp. From there, move to the next, move to the next. You have to move on like that. So that means you have to step down and climb up. You can't fly to the next mountain, I understand. But only then you are growing in terms of your own learning and in terms of how flexible and adaptable you are. And an important thing is, I feel, as an entry level person, you may not know, you may think you know your core strengths. The reality is, you do not know. And it is very important to speak to people and find out. And in that context, I would say one big tip is to have some kind of a mentor. It may be one person whom you have very comfortably, more senior than you. It should not be a peer. Both of you can get sucked into your own stories of weeping on each other's shoulder. But so there is some kind of mentorship where with a senior person, and that could really help you. That could really give you the perspective of not seeing just from your own limited view and focus on your strengths and guide you. So that is really important. And adding on, you said 2-3 tips, but I'm adding because I noted a few points for reference for this discussion, and I wanted to make sure I cover the important ones or what I consider as important.
Yeah.
We have to try to be efficient. See, in these days of everyone having info at fingertips, how do you make yourself different? It is not as if the intelligence alone can make all the difference. So it's a combination of efficiency. What is the point in you having the greatest idea if it is not coming across at the right time? So you have to be efficient about the work you do. And coming back to not seeing careers separately, especially relevant for the mid-career people, is focus on the overall lifestyle and see how your career fits.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you want to end, because at the end of the day, when you leave the company, when you retire, whatever it is, the next day, I am not sure the next day onwards people are going to feel sad. They may feel sad 1 or 2 days, but they will move on. Do you want to be just happy about, oh, this is the greatest thing I did, this was an excellent project I delivered, etc.? No. So it has to be a combination of give and take involving career and life. And so do not see the software life only from the career angle.
Yeah, nice. That's a good way to end this conversation because of time constraints, but I'm sure we'll have another opportunity to catch up on some of the other things we did cover.
Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Krishna.
We thank Siddharth for the music and Anita for promoting the Software People stories.
If you like this episode,
Please subscribe on your favorite podcast client.
And spread the word in your network.
if you'd like to share your story,
Contact us at podcasts@pm-powerconsulting.com.